Happy Tuesday. We are going live with Kimberly Stevens, and our theme of today is we're following in the line of Advent, and today is going to be about peace. And we are super excited because peace is a topic that we could all talk about forever. And it could forever evolve. So I am going to invite Kimberly on. Kimberly Stevens is our guest, and she's going to be great. The questions we have for her are awesome. I'm so excited. The past few weeks we've had a little fun getting people on here, but we will get her on. So just bear with me. For a minute, and usually takes a few minutes to get on, but how have you guys been? Sorry, I know that I can't see myself, but I'm trying to invite her on, so I know that I probably just look wild. Hello everyone, thanks for joining. We are going to be talking about peace today. And the guest that we have today we have such great questions. It just takes a second to get everyone on here. So thank you for your patience. The last couple of weeks, I don't know if Instagram is changing how they do their lives because they're always updating stuff, but it's been kind of a struggle. But we will get her. Just waiting for her to pop on. She just texted me and said that she is ready. So how has everyone's Christmas season been going? We at Salted Words are at the peak of our season. So I was just telling Blair at Maple and Dickerson earlier today, I was like, I just really love to be busy. And when I'm not busy, I'm worrying about how I'm going to be busy. So she's like, how are you doing? I'm like, I'm great. Is anyone else like that, or is that just me? Well, Kimberly, if you are on, I'd love for you to join. Sorry, guys. I know I keep pausing you. I'm texting her on the side trying to get her to come over here. And I know that this podcast is kind of not how everyone does their podcast. I know that everyone pre-films theirs, but we talked about bringing our podcast back several times, and every time that we actually had a completely different way we were going to film it, and God just kept bringing us to go back to doing it the way we started it years ago. So sometimes there's technology is a love-hate relationship, but I love being live. I love the authentication of it, and the what is said, and there's no going back because we're interacting with you right now in live time. So I was looking for a completely different name. I just invited her on. Alrighty, I see your request. So you'll just have to accept it and you should come right on. Also, whenever we have a hard time connecting on here, I'm always like, the devil's trying to get this not to happen. So then it makes me very motivated to make sure that it happens. I don't know why my brain works this way. Sorry. Thank you guys for being here. It's going to be a great talk. We also don't normally go on at 6 o'clock. Usually we go on at 4 o'clock. So this is a little bit different for us too. And I'm all alone. Usually my mom is here and she does most of the lead of the podcast. Um, so it's a little different too. So you just get me, which is great too. I was a little nervous earlier. One of the questions that we're going to talk about, which I'm excited about because I think that everyone can learn from other people's experiences. Kimberly's going to go into how when life feels really heavy, like how she keeps the peace and little tips and tricks that help her. So I feel like everyone can gain from that. Real? I don't know. I don't know where she is. Are you here? Hello.
I made it.
You know what? The past several weeks we were so smooth. I don't know if Instagram is changing stuff where they made you do more permissions or something, but it's okay.
Oh my gosh, thank you for your patience and for sending and resending. And I see my old roommate. She's not my old roommate. She's my roommate from college, which was a long time ago. Jen, hi.
Well, I've talked a little bit throughout trying to. So,
Oh my gosh, thank you.
yes, it's so nice to meet you. We usually start with just a like quick little introduction of yourself, and then we can get right into the questions too.
Absolutely. So I'm Kimberly Stevens. I live in Orlando, Florida. I have two grown kids. One's in Phoenix and one's in Kansas City, and they're amazing miracles. And we'll probably talk a little bit about that. But right now, it's just me in Orlando. I'm a health insurance broker. So right now is insanity time. And if
I
anybody
bet.
is really struggling with health insurance and need some help, I'm happy to help with that too.
Do you do all across the United States?
I do. I have 27 states.
Nice. That's awesome. I'm sure that you are swamped right now because isn't it all enrollment time?
It is absolutely insane right now. And this year's been especially hard. So, we're talking about peace tonight, and there really is no peace in health insurance right now. The system is broken.
Yeah, I could imagine. I'm sure you have lots of work all the time.
Yeah.
Well, if you are ready, we can start through the questions. So I like to just remind everyone how we do our podcast is we do a list of questions just to things that we really, really want to talk about. Sometimes we get through all of them. Sometimes we go off on rabbit trails and we don't get through them in the hour. But I think that however God leads it is always a blessing to us.
Absolutely.
So I kind of previously talked about us talking about peace. And the first question is Advent is all about waiting with hope. How do you personally cultivate a sense of peace when life feels uncertain or heavy, especially during the busy season?
Yeah, that's a really simple answer for me, and then a much more complicated answer for me as I go through um, my answer. And the answer truly is one step at a time, right? The Bible tells us, let the day's own troubles be sufficient for the day, right? We don't live our entire lifetime in one moment. We live this moment in this moment. And so truly the answer is one step at a time. But how do you do that in a practical way is a much more complicated answer. And so if you will indulge me to go back, and I just think it's just such a God moment that Jen, you are here. Jen Tonkinson, she and I swam together at the University of Iowa.
Okay.
And so my answer really stems back to my swimming days and something that I learned while I was swimming. And that was, we spent 6 hours a day in the pool training. And and we didn't just dive in the pool and swim for, hours and hours on end. We were given sets or repeats of things to do. So I always say we got a set of 10 to hundreds that we would do. What is that? 10 to hundreds is every 2 minutes and 20 seconds or whatever time interval our coach would set, we would have to do a repeat of 8 laps. And so if we came into the wall at 2 minutes and 10 seconds, we got 10 seconds of rest until we had to start the next one. And if we came in at 2 minutes, right, obviously we got 20 seconds of rest. And so we called those repeats. And when our coach would put a set on the board like that, I would look at that and go, oh my gosh, I have to do 10 200s. And to think about doing 10 200s all at once was truly overwhelming. And so I learned to break down each 200. So every 2 minutes and 20 seconds, I had to swim 8 laps of the pool. And I had a job in that 2 minutes and 20 seconds. And maybe it was I was going to work really, really hard on laps 5 and 6, or I was going to work really, really hard on 7 and 8, right? And there was always a strategy for those 8 laps. And then I would come to the wall and I would touch, and that one was done. And then I had one more to do. And then I had one more to do and one more to do until I was done with that set. And then we would kind of cool down in the pool for a good, couple of minutes. And then we'd start another set of something. And so if I were to have come into practice and, I'm 2.5 hours or 3 hours of swimming in the pool and thinking about all of the things that I had to do in that 3 hours, there is no way I would have ever made it through a workout.
Oh,
Would would present itself. And so that's where I think, peace really comes into play when we focus on what's in front of us in this very moment, and then we complete that, and then we focus on what the Lord brings next into our lives.
I love that. That's really just like, I mean, that's a whole nother level of slowing life down and focusing on the task at hand. And,
That's
you know, what a blessing that God gave that to you at an earlier age to be able to utilize that for your whole life.
100%, because there were a lot of, as my life progressed, and we'll probably get into my story a little bit, but I had a daughter who was born with some special needs, and she wasn't supposed to live a week. And as I walked through her life and her 4 years that we essentially spent in the hospital, um, that discipline and that practice of just living, sometimes we were living hour to hour with her life, just praying she wouldn't be in a coma in the next hour, and praying that she would survive this hour and I would survive this hour, and my toddler, her brother, would also survive that hour so that we could go on to the next. And thank God that he taught me that through swimming in the pool.
Yes, absolutely. Well, then I know that you have some more for the next couple of questions because this is kind of leading into so even in the midst of loss or trial, there are glimmers of hope. Can you share a moment where you felt God's peace shine through the hardest circumstances?
Yes, but I have to share the hard circumstance first, if that's okay.
Yes, absolutely. Well, that's why I was like, well, this next question leads right into.
Yeah. So I was inducted into the Hall of Fame for swimming at the University of Iowa in 2016, which truly that was one of the greatest joys and miracles of my life. Um,
Congratulations.
and thank you. But I say that to say that I'm a Hall of Fame winner, right? I'm a Hall of
Right?
Fame swimmer, right? But I'm also a Hall of Fame loser. And I'm just going to go through the list of loss, and then we're going to go back and we're going to answer the
Okay.
question, if that's okay.
I love it.
So in 1991, my first son was born December 23rd. His birthday's coming up. He unfortunately only lived 2 weeks. He passed away on January 7th and of 1992. And he was born with a rare genetic defect. His body couldn't process protein. It's called citrullinemia. It's a rare urea cycle disorder. And at the time, there were only about 3 children alive in the world with that disease. He did not survive. 3 miscarriages later, I was pregnant with my daughter, Victoria Faith, and we did some prenatal testing at 35 weeks, and it revealed that my daughter was healthy. And then when she was 3 days old after her birth, we were told the tests were mistaken and faulty because, right, there were only 3 kids alive in the world with this disease. So there was no data. And our data that we had gathered was wrong, and my daughter had the disease. So that meant they told us she wouldn't live a week. We spent about 4 years in the hospital with her, in and out, in life flight helicopters, in comas, at home, back in the hospital. No pattern, nothing predictable. Um, and then in 1997, she received a 4-year-old child's liver, and it cured her disease. It gave her a liver that could make the enzyme that her liver genetically couldn't make. And my daughter's 32 now, and she truly is Victoria Faith, and she's the biggest miracle of my life. Um, After her transplant, her dad and I split up. 90% of couples who have special needs children and 90% of couples who lose children divorce. And so it was a very high loss rate, right? So I went through a divorce. Then I went through a really bad custody battle that lasted about 6 years and drained my finances. And then I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and that drained my finances more. And then I was in pharmaceutical sales when Obamacare hit. And so 2012 came, and then I was laid off and rehired at a different lower salary 5 times in less than 2 years. And then in 2016, with my finances drained by cancer and a custody battle, I lost my home to foreclosure. And so in 2016, right, I was in my early 50s and I had lost everything. Um, and so I had to find a way to rebuild my life, which which I have done through insurance sales. And I'm super proud to say I live in Orlando and I now own a home, and and I'm very proud. I've God has restored the things that have been lost. So Hall of Fame swimmer, Hall of Fame loser. I think those losses qualify as Hall of Fame loss. And could take any one of us out, but then they were just consistent losses over many years. So I want to go back to the first loss, and that was my son. And he died on January 7th of 1992. And I, I can't sugarcoat or gloss over the devastation in my heart. And I lived in San Diego, a place where the sun shines, 363 days out of
Yeah.
365, and it's always the same. It's beautiful, it's wonderful. I truly did not see the sunshine for 8 months. And during that 8 months, God brought this woman into my life. Her name is Lynn. And if I didn't know she were a real person, I would tell you that she's an angel. Because she kind of inserted herself in my life one step at a time. And I think this story is so important because of the way that she did it. It was such a God thing. God knew what I needed and exactly what I could accept. And if she had come into my life and said, "Oh, I want to be your friend and I want to help you get through this," I would have been like, "I'm good. I'm
Right.
fine.
Yeah.
I don't need you." Right? But she didn't do that. She called me, and she's not a dog person. And I had just gotten a puppy. And she said, "I heard you got a puppy. We're thinking about getting a puppy. Can I come see yours?" Okay. I don't know this woman from Adam, but she wants to come meet my puppy, and he's my new baby. So yes, you can come over. So then she started asking me questions. And she said, "Are you angry with God?" Yes. Um, do you love God? No. Do you think you can love God tomorrow? And I said, maybe. And and then she said, "Can I call you in a couple of days?"
So where did you meet her?
At my church.
Okay. Okay.
Yep. And so there is actually another part of this story. I didn't know this was going on, but God had put me on her heart. And God had told her I was her project. And so here's this poor woman. I know her knees are worn out and she probably needs knee replacement surgery because of me in 1992, because I know she was praying for me constantly. And what was so beautiful is the way that she approached me was always with just one more, right? She did not try to solve my entire problem. She just came with what she had for that day. And she met me where I was in that day. And then she would always, and I'm in sales, so I use this word, it's funny. She would always close me for one more appointment,
Yes.
right? And so she would just, we would be done with whatever we were doing for that day. And then she would say, oh, can I call you on Wednesday? Or let's go do blah, blah, blah. Let's go have coffee on Thursday or whatever it was. But she always kept just one more appointment with me. So she was keeping close tabs on me. Her question always was, do you love God today? And I would say no. And then she would say, can you love him tomorrow? And I would say every time, maybe. And that maybe kept the door open for her to keep coming back.
Right.
And thank you, Lord, that he left my heart open enough to say maybe, right? When we say no and we close that door down, right, we're really making a decision that we're not going to overcome or heal or bring peace or anything into our circumstance. We just want our circumstance to stay the exact same way it is right now when we say no. Maybe is not yes, but maybe is not no. And maybe leaves the door open for God to just move something in our hearts a little bit. And so for 8 months, Lynn and I did this dance. And she would always ask me, and I was very angry, and I kept thinking, I am going to demand answers from God. God, you owe me answers. Why did my son die? Why is there a baby in a dumpster with no mom that's going to love him? That actually happened in that summer. I heard it on the news in San Diego, and my heart broke. Why is there a baby in a dumpster with no mom to love him when I'm a mom who would love my baby and my baby isn't here? Why? I went to the San Diego Zoo to just kind of walk around and find my peace. And you know what I found? I found a mommy gorilla with a brand new baby that everybody was, around. And I was so mad at God. I'm like, why does the gorilla even have a baby? Where is mine? And why are my arms and my heart so empty? And there were no answers. And I wanted God to give me the answers. And so it was in August. It was a full 8 months later, the end of August even. And I decided one day that I was going to get my answers. And I was going into a chapel. And so I went into the chapel, and it was Isaac my Isaac moment, right? My name, Jacob becoming Israel. That moment where I'm going to go wrestle with God and I'm going to get my answers, damn it. And that is how I walked into the chapel. And thank you, Lord. There was nobody in the chapel. Because I walked in there,
Yeah. Yeah.
that athlete in me. And I walked in there, and I'm like, I sat down in the front, and I just kind of, it's reverent in a chapel. And so I was a little bit reverent, a little bit. And I just was kind of like, God, why? I'm not leaving here until you give me the answer. Why? And I sat there for a few minutes, nothing. And I started crying a little bit. And so I asked the question this time out loud, the second time, and I literally was like, God, why? And I heard nothing. And I'm sitting in this chapel and I'm going, I'm not leaving this chapel, God. I'll stay here for 2 years if I have to. I'm not leaving this chapel until you tell me why, because you owe me this answer. And I was really angry because nothing was coming back. And I literally started sobbing. And it was in my sobbing that I think I screamed in the chapel, God, why? And I just started sobbing. And I could not stop sobbing. And it was, I don't know if it was audible or if it was instant but it was somewhere after that, just massive sobbing question that God said to me, Kimberly, if I sit right here next to you and I tell you my reasons, will it take away your pain? And I had to be honest and say, no. And then I heard God say, then why are you asking why? And I had to say, I don't know, because I thought that might comfort me. And the sad part is there was no answer. No answer that anyone could have given me that would bring back my son. No answer that God could have given me that would have taken away the loss or the pain that I felt. And so it was in that moment, and this is the answer to the question, and it's a very long answer, and I'm so sorry.
No, I feel like it's necessary.
And it really was in that moment where I said to myself, if the answer I'm seeking is not going to help me, perhaps I'm seeking the wrong answers. And and so it was really in that moment where I started mixing up a lot of verses, but in Corinthians, it tells us that now we see in a mirror dimly. And um, one day we will know as we are fully known today. And so what that verse tells me is that I don't know anything right now, but one day I'm going to know everything in the same way that God fully knows me and my heart right now. On that one day when I meet my Savior, I am going to know him as intimately as he knows me. There's going to be no more barriers, no more sin, no more crying, no more sorrow, no more pain, no more tears, no more death, no more separation.
Right.
I am going to know him as that on that day as fully as he knows me. And on that day, in that moment, in that blink of an eye, I will not need to ask him any questions. I will know. And I will be so in awe of who he is and his presence and what he has done for me in my life that none of these questions will matter any longer. I will see everything and I will see the beauty in the ashes of my life. And so that is what I look forward to.
Yes. And I often wonder why we have to go through such tragedy a lot of times. And it's unavoidable. Everyone at some point in their lives experience tragedy. And if we could all captivate it the way that you have and not resort to all of this world madness, and I mean, God can handle us being upset. He can handle us screaming at him. In fact, sometimes I think that that's where he wants us to get, to truly come to and be with him as close as possible. Because in those moments, would we need him as much? Sometimes I think about those things because tragedy is real. Grieving is real. And some people don't make it out on the other end or on the other side and cling on to Jesus because he doesn't say these things won't come, but he does promise us the fruits of the Spirit and to just hold on to him and to just cling on to him and he'll get us through. So
And he promises us his peace.
he
My
does.
peace, I leave you peace, right? And that's not a conditional thing. My peace, I leave you peace. And I forget this all the time. And I go on in my chaos. Right now it's writing health insurance. At other times of the year, it's other things. But I go on in my chaos, and then I have to remind myself to come back and go, okay, the peace is mine for the taking, mine for the experiencing, mine for the experiencing. That's probably the best way to say it. And so often I think that my circumstances steal my peace. Oh no, they are not more powerful than Jesus. My peace
Right,
I leave you. My peace I leave you. It is there. And with the Holy Spirit, it's there within us.
right,
And we need only access it. And I think we forget that. And it's not a conditional thing. Like
right,
I give you my peace when, all your ducks are
right,
aligned and,
right,
and all of that. No, I give you my peace, period. And so we need to just ask for eyes to see it and access it and find it and live in it.
right. It's it's so easy. It's of Christmas, which is where we're supposed to be at peace and love and all of the things, but life is busy. It gets very busy. We want everything to be just perfect and it truly we've had a couple of podcasts on Sabbath and it kind of reminds me of this is every moment is a choice. Every
Yes.
moment is choosing peace and you have to seek it. You have to seek Jesus in every moment. And even when you're really, really, really busy, you can still be at peace.
Yep, it goes back to the 200s, right? One step at a time.
Right? I love it. I'm going to remember the 200s. I'm never going to be a swimmer, but I'm going to implement that in different areas of my life.
I love it.
So, Christmas reminds us of God's promises, which we were just talking about. And how has your faith helped you navigate despair while still holding on to hope for brighter days?
Oh gosh. It goes back to exactly what we've just been talking about. And, without that hope that one day I will fully know, and just as I am fully known today, right? That is my ultimate hope.
Right?
And um, and there will be no more tears or crying or pain or suffering or sorrow or death or separation or insert your blank, right?
Yes.
There's no more sin that separates us. So that is the ultimate promise that this it's temporary, and that is eternal and 100% promised. And the only thing I want to hear is, well done, good and faithful servant, enter into joy today. And when I enter there, this doesn't matter. So take my house, can't really say it, but take my son, He can't take my hope.
Right.
Satan can steal so many things from us, but he does not get the ultimate victory. And so we just hold on to that, and that makes these other things bearable.
Love that. Well, this kind of goes into the last question, as this season can be especially hard for those carrying loss. How can we celebrate and embrace the joy of Christmas without ignoring the reality of our hardships?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so my son, Braden, was born on December 23rd. He came home from the hospital on Christmas Eve in a stocking. And so there's a story here. And so I'm logging in from extendtherose.org. And that's an organization that my daughter and my son and I and others have founded based on this story. And this is
Okay.
exactly how I have gotten through the holidays. So when my son was born, I was given yellow roses. Just as a gift, right? You take roses to somebody who has a
Right.
baby in the hospital.
Mhm.
Okay, so somebody gave me yellow roses. He was a boy, and they were beautiful, and I absolutely loved them. And after he passed, um, I found myself extremely with these empty arms and hands. And I think I've mentioned that a couple of times, but it was so profound to me that my hands were supposed to be holding and nurturing a baby, and they were empty. And so one of my attempts to fill my empty hands was I planted a rose bush in my yard, and I lived in San Diego, and I must not have planted it in the right place. We can go through a million scenarios on this, but the rose bush did not bloom. It was the Charlie Brown rose bush of, Charlie Brown's, right? And so I nurtured this thing, and I watered and fertilized, and I did everything I knew to do to get a rose to bloom, and just wasn't doing anything. And it was about 5 months later, I noticed a little teeny tiny bud on the rose bush. And I was like, oh my gosh, it might actually bloom. And so at that point in time, Mother's Day was coming up, another holiday. Now imagine Mother's Day coming up the first time after you've lost your baby and your only child. And so it was just this day that I dreaded, holiday. And, I didn't know, do I stand up in church when they say all the moms stand up? Do I sit down? What do I do? Am I a mom? I don't know. It just was, of course I was a mom, but
Right.
right. It was just that, it was just ugly and hating that holiday. And, and do you know that the very first rose bloomed on Mother's Day?
Really. I love it.
So it was such a gift from God. It was just in my mind, my interpretation of that gift was God was saying to me, I see you, I celebrate you as a mom, and right, and it was just such a precious gift. So this second rose that ever bloomed on that rose bush bloomed on Father's Day. And I gave it to my husband, and we both just wept. And again, we said, wow, God is seeing us and celebrating us as parents. And then the third rose, the thing went dormant. Like it went in full Charlie Brown mode. I am not kidding you, for over a year. And I thought it was dead. And then literally right before my daughter was born, there was a little bud on the rose, on the rose bush. And I said, "Oh my gosh, she's not going to be born until this rose blooms." And so my belly's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And and this rose is not getting bigger. And I'm going, I'm going to go outside and put a hair dryer on that thing and make it bloom because I want to have this baby.
Yes.
And so literally we go through, she's born, and we came home from the hospital and there's no rose. It's still a tiny little bud. And I'm going, God, you missed something here. And I was really kind of disappointed. But then 3 days later, we got the phone call. My daughter had central anemia. We had to get her into the ICU immediately. We got her there and they said she wouldn't live a week. And we started doing all these experimental treatments. And we ended up spending 11 days in the hospital, and we learned some coping mechanisms that might keep her alive. And you know, the day that we came home from the hospital, the rose bloomed.
I love it.
So our organization is called Extend the Rose. And that is what we do, is we try to bring hope back to people, right? In the same way that that rose said to me from God, I see you, I celebrate you in this
Right.
moment, right? That's what we're doing with Extend the Rose. We're going back into children's hospitals primarily, and helping people see that we see them, their fight matters, we celebrate them, and God sees them too. And so in extending the rose, we're right, we're sharing, we're being the hands and feet of Jesus.
Right.
And so that story actually continues, right? We didn't start Extend the Rose until my daughter was 30. And so there were a lot of Christmases and a lot of Mother's Days that went by in those 30 years. It was actually 32 because my son passed away and was born and passed away 2 years before my daughter was born. And so that yellow rose, what ended up happening for me over time is every Mother's Day, God gives me a yellow rose. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's somebody sends me a card and it's got a rose on it, or if one year my neighbor's rose bush next door bloomed, like all these yellow roses on Mother's Day. Um, there's always a yellow rose for me to find on Mother's Day, and God always gives it. And I just always pray for eyes to see it. And on Christmas, right, December 23rd is Braden's birthday. And and so I always have yellow roses on that day. Now, yellow roses are not always easy to find at Christmas
Yeah,
time.
I was just thinking,
Hmm. And
I can't remember seeing a yellow rose.
yeah, and so now here's like just the sweetest story ever. Is there was one December 23rd, and I don't know why, but I was having a panic moment and I was not trusting God. And I was like on a quest to go get roses, yellow roses. And I went to every grocery store and every florist in my town looking for yellow roses because I was determined I was going to have yellow roses. And then I went to this little florist that was literally 200 yards from my doorway. And I saw in their cooler, they had a dozen yellow roses and they were gorgeous. And I walked like straight to the cash register and I said, I need those roses. They were the only yellow roses in my town on that day. And the lady said to me, I'm sorry, those are sold. You can't have them. And I literally started crying. And I was like, those are the only yellow roses in Evanston, Illinois right now. And so I got a little mad. And I went about my day, and that was literally about 11 o'clock in the morning. And I got home at about 4 or 5 that evening, and sitting on my counter were those exact roses. And do you know, my kids who were in high school at the time had pre-ordered them and had had them delivered for me for that day. And those were the roses I was trying to buy for myself. Right? And so I just think that story is absolutely precious. One, because of how thoughtful my children were, that they thought about that. Um, more importantly, and most importantly, how thoughtful God was to provide
Right.
for me yellow roses on that day. Um, and despite my doubt and my fear and my scrambling to provide for myself, which I couldn't do, God came through my children in the most, like, he couldn't have made that gesture more beautiful
Right. Right.
by providing through my children. And so how do I get through the holidays, right? Yellow roses. Um, and maybe it's not a yellow rose for people who are listening. Maybe it's something else that's just really precious. But I believe that if we open our eyes and we ask God to help us see where He is giving us that moment of grace and peace, where He's giving us a yellow rose. If we just ask for eyes to see Him, He will show up.
Right.
We will see it. I have never not gotten a yellow rose.
Well, and also starting, you know, God giving you that to like, that's like a little nugget that you get to give someone and then tell them such a beautiful testimony.
Absolutely.
It's amazing. I love to hear stories like that because it's how, I don't know how people disprove him with stuff like that. How can you hear something like that and just be like, meh, nope, sorry. Like, you can't because no one on this earth could duplicate that.
No one. And God is so personal. He picked a yellow rose to bless me with. And right? And he wove that through my story over the last 30 plus years of someone had to physically give me a yellow rose when my son was born. And then God has woven that through my story. Now, here's the actually really coolest thing ever about the yellow rose is Extend the Rose, our organization. We have been invited, and I believe God will provide the funding to be in the Rose Parade on January 1st, 2027. And so that one little yellow rose will now be seen by 28 million people in the Rose Parade on TV on January 1st, 2027.
Well,
One
we'll be
rose.
praying for you. That's awesome.
It's just, right? I mean, God is just, he's hilarious. I mean,
Yes,
who would ever make that
that you can.
up?
Well, I will be looking forward to seeing the Rose Parade, and we're just gonna count it as a thank you already, and exciting to see where it goes.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, I have loved our talk, and thank you for sharing all of your wisdom and your testimony. We do usually end our podcast with a golden nugget, which is if you could give anyone out there a piece of advice, what would it be?
It's my three signature words, never give up. And, it's funny, I read through the Bible chronologically every year. And so
Mhm.
right now it's wavering between Acts and then Corinthians and then back to Acts and then Ephesians and Romans and right. And so it goes all the way through chronologically. And God is just giving me these amazing little nuggets where Paul just says over and over again to the new believers or to the persecuted believers, or he says, never give up so many times. And it's blowing my mind. And I've said it. I wrote a book with my story, and it's called Altered, Altar apostrophe D, because altar, right? The altar of
Uh-huh.
God.
I love it.
And that's all capitalized. And then the apostrophe D is lowercase because that's about me. But the subtitle of the book is Finding Hope Through Grit and Gratitude to Never Give Up. And I didn't realize that never give up was my mantra or my
Mhm.
saying, but um, it really is. And I guess I've said it a lot because my daughter organized a surprise birthday party for me in October, and there were so many friends and family who came, and they sang happy birthday to me, and then everybody, it was just weird. Everybody at the end of the happy birthday song just kept saying, never give up, never give up. You're the never give up girl, never give up. And it made my heart so happy, um, because all of these things that have happened could have taken me out. And
Right.
by God's grace, they didn't. And if I can do that, I can do that. Anybody can do that. And so never give up.
I love it. I'm writing it on my heart. Well, I look forward to seeing your future with Extend the Rose for sure. I will keep close tabs.
Thank
And
you.
we will be praying for you. We
Thank
love, my mom and I love to have our journals of people to pray for, especially stuff like this is like something in the future to pray for. So I wish you could have been here with us, but we'll get together again on a live or something. And
Absolutely. I would love that.
yes, well, thank you so much. And we'll be in
You. This is
contact.
my privilege. Thank you so much.
God bless.
You too. Thank you.